Ladies and gentlemen, everyone wants the mountaintop, but few are willing to climb in the dark. Big dreams are not handed out. They are earned, step by grueling step on the back of sacrifice and discipline. You want the prize, then you must pay the price. The first truth is this: a definite purpose demands a definite sacrifice. You cannot casually wish for greatness and expect it to visit your life. If you burn with desire to build something monumental, you must extinguish distractions. You must trade Netflix for notebooks, comfort for commitment, leisure for learning. It's not punishment. It's the tax you pay for a vision. Second, discipline is the price tag of greatness. The 4 a.m. alarm clock, no one claps when you stay in and study, train, or build while the world parties. But those invisible victories, they are the compound interest of success. Discipline is choosing what you want most over what you want now. And third, understand this clearly. Sacrifice is not loss, it is exchange. You are not giving things up, you are trading lesser things for something greater. You're not losing friends when you walk away from negativity, you're making room for mentors, leaders, and builders. Fourth, your habits build your future in silence. Dreams do not need drama, they need structure. A disciplined routine is the quiet architect of extraordinary lives. The world is full of noisy intentions and empty calendars. You don't need to talk about your dream, just train for it. Fifth, excuses are thieves in disguise. Every time you say, "I don't have time," or "I'll start Monday," a part of your future dies. Be ruthless with excuses. They are dressed up in logic, but underneath they are liars. The disciplined mind doesn't negotiate with procrastination, it dominates it. Finally, remember, persistence without discipline is just chaos. Effort without focus is wasted energy. A person who works hard but lacks discipline is like a river with no banks, moving fast but going nowhere. Discipline gives direction. Discipline turns effort into results. So yes, big dreams need big sacrifices. But here's the beauty: every disciplined day compounds. Every hard choice becomes momentum. The world may not notice yet, but your future is watching and is counting on you. Discipline yourself now, so you never have to apologize to your future self later. Over a decade, and as a great achievement, begins with a clear, burning sense of purpose. Not a wish, not a vague intention, but a definite purpose. A goal so specific and alive in your heart that it commands your focus, sharpens your decisions, and shapes your days. A definite purpose is not something you stumble into, it is something you choose, something you commit to without hesitation, something that becomes the gravitational center of your life. But here's the law that governs purpose. The greater the dream, the greater the sacrifice it demands. There is no such thing as elevation without effort, no transformation without trade-offs. If you want to rise above average, you must leave behind the comforts of average. If you want to live a life of significance, you cannot afford to live like those who settle for survival. Too many people are trying to achieve great things while holding tightly to everything that is convenient, familiar, or easy. They want a future that looks different, but they're not willing to change the present that creates it. They are attached to habits that soothe them in the moment, but sabotage them in the long run. And as a result, their dream remains just that, a dream, floating far beyond the reach of their reality. Definite purpose, however, is not casual. It is not interested in your comfort zone. It does not accommodate your excuses. When a person truly discovers their purpose, their life begins to change, because purpose makes demands. Purpose disrupts your routine. It disturbs your laziness. It confronts your distractions and dares you to let go of what no longer serves you. You cannot serve two masters. You cannot cling to your highest calling while also indulging your lowest habits. Purpose insists that you choose. It's either your vision or your vices. It's either your potential or your pleasures. And you must be willing to decide every single day. This is the reality most people avoid because sacrifice feels painful. And it is. It costs you time. It costs you energy. It costs you your evenings, your weekends, your entertainment, your social approval, and your short-term gratification. But what many fail to see is that sacrifice is not punishment. It is a powerful transaction. When you sacrifice what is small, you make room for what is great. When you release what is holding you down, you give yourself the wings to rise. Look at anyone who has built something lasting, an empire, a legacy, a movement, a breakthrough. Without exception, their journey was marked by sacrifice. They turned off the noise so they could hear their own thoughts. They said no to distractions so they could say yes to discipline. They gave up popularity to pursue purpose. They traded convenience for consistency, comfort for commitment, and ease for excellence. They made choices that hurt in the moment, but healed them in the long run. You cannot microwave mastery. You cannot shortcut significance. And you cannot multitask your way to purpose. It requires your full presence, your full attention, your full willingness to give up what is good in order to build what is great. The question is not, can you do it? The question is, are you willing to let go of what keeps you from doing it? The definite purpose filters your life. It shows you what deserves your time and what doesn't. It separates the essential from the trivial. It makes you uncomfortable with mediocrity. It reorders your priorities and forces you to eliminate anything that competes with your mission. Friends who distract you, cut them off. Habits that drain you, replace them. Thoughts that paralyze you, reprogram them. This is not about being harsh. It is about being honest. You cannot become who you are meant to be by holding on to who you used to be. And this is why so few ever realize their potential. They want transformation without trade-offs. They want growth without discomfort. But purpose doesn't work like that. Purpose is not polite, it is demanding. It asks for your mornings, your nights, your resources, your energy, your sleep, your doubt, your pride, your fear, and your comfort. It leaves no part of you untouched. But in exchange, it gives you clarity. It gives you momentum. It gives you identity, direction, and resilience. It pulls you out of the crowd and sets you apart. It gives you something real to wake up for and something powerful to endure for. It builds your life around meaning, not just movement. So when you say you want something big, something rare, something world-shifting, you must understand the trade. You must be willing to surrender. You must be willing to restructure your lifestyle around the vision. Your definite purpose is waiting, but it's not coming closer until you show that you are serious. And seriousness is always proven by sacrifice. Every person is born with potential, but not every person fulfills it. Potential is common, discipline is rare, and greatness does not reward potential. It rewards discipline. It does not respond to how gifted you are, how lucky you are, or how loudly you speak about your goals. Greatness listens for the quiet daily footsteps of the disciplined, the ones who show up when it's hard, who persist when it's dull, who act when there's no applause. Discipline is the price tag that hangs on every worthwhile goal. You don't pay for greatness in cash. You pay for it with early mornings, long nights, repeated routines, uncomfortable growth, and thousands of tiny decisions that the world may never see. That's what makes discipline so powerful. It is the invisible currency that buys visible transformation. Many people want success, but they want it on their terms. They want the rewards without the rituals, the outcomes without the obedience, the spotlight without the solitude. They think greatness is something you stumble into when the time is right. But that thinking is a lie. Greatness is never random. It is always earned. It is always constructed, brick by brick, day by disciplined day. Discipline is doing what must be done even when you don't feel like doing it. It is waking up early when sleep begs you to stay in bed. It is saying no to comfort and yes to consistency. It is ignoring distractions, resisting temptations, and silencing the inner voice that says, just this once. Take it easy. Discipline is not glamorous. It is not loud, it does not brag, but it always delivers. And discipline does not negotiate. It doesn't care how talented you are or how much motivation you had last week. Discipline is not built on moods or moments. It is built on decisions. Daily, repeated, intentional decisions. The disciplined individual doesn't wait for inspiration. They do what needs to be done regardless of how they feel, because they understand that moods are fleeting, but results are permanent. Discipline is the great equalizer. Talent may give someone a head start, but discipline determines who finishes the race. You've seen it. The gifted athlete who wastes their promise because they couldn't stay focused. The brilliant student who crumbles under pressure because they lacked routine. The charismatic entrepreneur who burns out because they never built systems. In every case, potential without discipline collapses. And yet, in contrast, discipline can elevate the average into the exceptional. It can turn the ordinary into the extraordinary. The most successful people are often not the most talented. They are simply the most consistent. They mastered the boring. They embraced repetition. They practiced the basics so often that excellence became second nature. While others looked for shortcuts, they laid bricks. While others chased hacks, they chased habits. Discipline is a form of freedom, not restriction. It may feel like it limits your options in the moment, but in truth, it expands your life in the long run. The person who disciplines their mind is free from chaos. The person who disciplines their time is free from regret. The person who disciplines their emotions is free from breakdown. Discipline builds borders that protect your future. Without it, your life is ruled by impulse, reactivity, and regret. Most people resist discipline because it demands discomfort. It's easier to stay in the familiar, it's easier to make excuses, it's easier to say, I'll start tomorrow. But the truth is, the pain of discipline is far less than the pain of disappointment. When you skip the workout, delay the work, break the promise to yourself, you don't escape pain. You just trade short-term ease for long-term dissatisfaction. Discipline hurts now, but delivers later. Indulgence feels good now, but destroys later. Discipline is also deeply personal. No one can force you into it. You must choose it. You must want your future more than your excuses. You must want the outcome badly enough that the process becomes sacred. Discipline is not a punishment. It is a sign of respect for your dream, for your calling, for the greatness that lies dormant inside you. There will always be resistance, always reasons to stop, always voices, internal and external, telling you to take a break, to slow down, to take it easy. But discipline is what keeps you grounded when motivation fades. Motivation is a spark. Discipline is the engine. Motivation can be killed by a bad day. Discipline survives storms. Now, the deeper truth is that discipline is not just what you do, it becomes who you are. It rewires your identity. Every time you show up, when it's hard, you cast a vote for the future version of yourself. You reinforce the image of someone who follows through, someone who keeps their word, someone who does not surrender. Over time, discipline doesn't just help you reach your goals, it helps you believe you are worthy of them. Sacrifice is one of the most misunderstood words in the language of success. To many, it sounds like punishment, like giving something up forever, like denying oneself of joy or comfort. But this perception is not only flawed, it is dangerous. Because the truth is, sacrifice is not loss, It is exchange. It is not about subtraction. It is about investment. It is not a funeral. It is a trade. Something lesser today for something greater tomorrow. When people hear the word sacrifice, they often imagine deprivation. They imagine a bleak, joyless path where pleasures are stripped away and replaced with suffering. But in reality, sacrifice is simply choosing what matters more over what matters now. It is the wisdom to trade something comfortable for something meaningful. It is a decision to forego instant gratification in favor of long-term elevation. We all sacrifice, whether we realize it or not. Every time you choose to sleep in, you sacrifice progress. Every time you avoid the hard conversation, you sacrifice trust. Every time you choose convenience, you sacrifice growth. The question is not whether you will sacrifice. The question is why. Sacrifice, when done with purpose, is never wasteful. It is a deliberate, strategic act. It is giving up what is good so you can build what is great. It is giving up what is easy so you can earn what is rare. You do not sacrifice time with your friends to work on your craft because you hate joy. You do it because you love your future more. You do not sacrifice weekends to study because you enjoy stress. You do it because you want the freedom that knowledge brings. These are not acts of loss. They are exchanges of value. Consider the athlete who sacrifices parties, comfort, food, and endless leisure. It may look like a life of restriction from the outside, but in truth, it's a life of focus. They are exchanging momentary pleasure for lifelong strength, purpose, and potential. The sacrifice is not a prison, it is the path. The same is true for the entrepreneur who risks stability to chase vision, for the artist who stays in to master their skill. These individuals are not losing, they are investing. The pain of sacrifice only stings when we forget what we're gaining. If you keep your eyes on what you're letting go of, you'll always feel like something's being taken from you. But if you keep your eyes on what you're moving toward, every sacrifice begins to make sense. You begin to see it not as suffering, but as strategy, not as punishment, but as preparation. There is no such thing as success without trade-offs. Time is limited. Energy is finite. Focus is not unlimited. You can't be everywhere, do everything, and expect excellence. To become something, you must stop being something else. To go forward, you must leave something behind. That may be a habit, that may be a relationship, that may be a version of yourself that no longer serves where you're going. But it must go. The most painful sacrifices are often not physical. They are emotional. Letting go of identity, comfort zones, or ego takes far more courage than giving up sleep or luxury. Real growth demands space, and sacrifice creates that space. You cannot fill a life that is already full. You must clear the clutter. You must empty your hands of distractions so they can carry something meaningful. That's what sacrifice does. It makes room. It prepares the ground. It says, I am ready for something bigger than this. And you don't need the world to understand your sacrifices. They are not walking your path. They don't hear the calling in your soul. They don't lie awake at night thinking about your goals. Let them laugh. Let them question. Let them misinterpret. You're not doing it for applause. You're doing it because the future you see demands it. And if the vision is real, the price is always worth it. What makes sacrifice powerful is that it requires vision and trust. Vision to see what isn't here yet, and trust to believe that the trade is not in vain. Most people quit too early, not because they didn't want it, but because they misread the cost. They saw the sacrifice and mistook it for punishment. They didn't realize it was the down payment. They wanted a harvest but weren't willing to till the soil. They wanted to rise but refused to release the weight hold them down. But if you can learn to reframe sacrifice as exchange, as investment, as alignment, everything changes. You stop resenting the process, you start respecting it. You start to find pride in what you walk away from because you know it's making space for what you're walking toward. You begin to carry your discipline like a badge, not a burden. You begin to appreciate that everything you're giving up is creating capacity for something better. In the noise of the world, it's easy to think that the loudest voice, the biggest moves, and the boldest declarations create success. But that's a myth. Real achievement, the kind that endures, the kind that transforms a life, is built not in chaos or commotion, but in stillness, in quiet repetition, in the invisible, uncelebrated routines you repeat when no one is watching. Your habits, not your hype, are building your future. And they're doing it in silence. Habits are the builders that never rest. They're the invisible workers laying bricks behind the scenes, shaping your character, your mindset, your direction, and ultimately your results. You don't notice them day to day, but over time they construct the architecture of your destiny. If your habits are sloppy, your future will be unstable. If your habits are sharp, focused, and intentional, your future becomes solid, structured, and secure. Most people look at the results others have achieved and ask, how did they get there? They want the highlight reel. They want the winning moment. But what they fail to recognize is that greatness is not created in moments. It is created in mornings, in how you start your day, in whether you hit snooze or stand up, in whether you scroll or study, in whether you reach for comfort or reach for progress. The world will notice when you succeed, but they will never see the thousands of ordinary decisions that made that success possible. That's the paradox of success. It looks spectacular on the outside, but it is staggeringly ordinary on the inside. A person's life is not changed by one big leap. It's changed by 1,000 small steps taken with discipline and intention. The problem is, because habits work silently, many people ignore them. They underestimate the power of the small, but the small, repeated daily, is what becomes powerful. Habits are settled, but they are not weak. They are the compounding interest of personal development. The choice to read 10 pages a day doesn't feel like much until you realize you read dozens of books in a year. The choice to exercise for 30 minutes doesn't feel heroic until you realize you've transformed your body, your energy, your mindset. The choice to focus for an extra hour a day doesn't seem revolutionary until you look back and see how far ahead you've moved while others stayed stagnant. Most people wait for motivation, but the disciplined understand the power of systems. They know that if they can lock their life into structure, momentum will carry them through the days when energy fails. That's the magic of habit. It does not rely on inspiration. It relies on rhythm. Once built, it removes willpower from the equation. It makes progress automatic. And the truth is, your current results are already being shaped by your current habits, whether you're aware of them or not. You may not consciously think about how you spend your evenings, how often you train your mind, or how you use your downtime, but your future self is living with the consequences of those patterns. If your habits are aligned with mediocrity, no amount of desire will bring you excellence. If your routines are chaotic, your results will be unstable. The future is not something you step into, it's something you're building minute by minute with your habits. Habits are not just external routines, they are internal reinforcements. Every time you follow through, you reinforce belief in yourself. Every time you complete what you committed to, you teach yourself that your word has value. And every time you break that pattern, you do the opposite. You erode trust in your own promises. You silently weaken your self-respect. No one else may know, but you do. And your future self will feel it. The most dangerous thing about bad habits is not how they feel, but how quiet they are. They don't announce themselves with destruction. They just chip away slowly. Procrastination feels harmless in the moment. Laziness looks like rest. Distraction feels like entertainment. But these things accumulate. A little today, a little tomorrow, and eventually the gap between where you are and where you want to be becomes a canyon. Likewise, good habits feel unrewarding at first. You wake early, but don't feel smarter. You eat clean, but don't see results. You work hard, but don't get praise. That's because the results are slow. They're silent, but they're coming. Your habits are doing the work of planting seeds, even when nothing seems to be growing. And if you stay consistent long enough, the breakthrough comes, not because of a big moment, but because of the quiet, patient labor you've invested every day before it. The discipline to build strong habits is one of the greatest gifts you can give yourself. It removes chaos, it eliminates the guesswork, it creates predictability in an unpredictable world, and it grants you the rare and powerful advantage of consistency. Because in the long game, consistency beats intensity. Not the person who works the hardest once, but the person who works steadily for years wins. Excuses are smooth talkers. They wear convincing masks. They sound like logic, feel like protection, and speak in a voice that is familiar and comfortable. But beneath the surface, they are not your allies. They are not there to support you or keep you safe. Excuses are thieves. Thieves in disguise. They do not announce their intent. They creep in quietly, plant doubt, and then slowly rob you of your potential, your time, your opportunities, your greatness. Excuses don't come to steal in one bold moment. They operate in inches, not miles. They chip away at your dreams quietly, invisibly, often with your permission. I'll do it tomorrow. I'm not ready yet. It's not the right time. I don't have the resources. These statements don't sound like destruction, but they are. Each one is a subtle surrender. Each one pushes your goal one step further out of reach. The danger of excuses is not that they're loud or forceful. The danger is that they're reasonable. Excuses wrap themselves in logic. They appeal to your emotions. They align with your fears. That's how they slip through the front door of your mind and start rearranging the furniture of your beliefs. They don't have to be true to be effective. They only have to be believable. And once you believe them, they start to write your story. People don't fail because they lack intelligence, talent, or ambition. Most failures come not from what people couldn't do, but from what they refused to try. And the refusal didn't come from laziness. It came from excuses. The more intelligent you are, the better your excuses sound. You can rationalize anything. You can explain your delay, justify your distraction, and intellectualize your stagnation until it sounds like wisdom. But underneath it all, your progress is being stolen by a voice that tells you not now. Excuses are not random. They are carefully shaped by your fears. If you fear failure, your excuse will be about risk. If you fear judgment, your excuse will be about timing. If you fear responsibility, your excuse will be about readiness. Excuses are not rooted in external reality. They are rooted in internal resistance. They do not describe the world. They reflect your willingness to challenge it. And what makes excuses dangerous is how easy they are to repeat. Once you say it once, it becomes easier to say it again. I don't have the time becomes a daily mantra. I'm not good enough becomes a quiet belief. I'll start next week becomes a permanent delay. Excuses multiply. They breed more excuses, and before long, a single moment of hesitation becomes a lifestyle of avoidance. You may not notice it at first. The losses are invisible. You skip a workout. You delay a decision. You let a phone call slide. It feels like nothing changed, but something did. The opportunity passed, the momentum faded, the self-trust weakened. You think you just postponed progress, but what you did was empower the thief. You gave your excuses the keys to your future. Our excuses are not passive. They are aggressive in their effect. Every time you choose an excuse over an action, you reinforce limitation. You strengthen the inner voice that tells you to wait, to hide, to play small. And with each repetition, that voice gains more control. Soon, you're not just someone who makes excuses. You become someone who lives by them. And that is the greatest theft of all, the loss of belief in your own power. The only way to disarm excuses is to confront them with truth, not emotional comfort, not soothing logic, but truth. Ask yourself, is this really true, or is this just easier to believe? Is time really the issue, or are you avoiding discomfort? Is money really the problem, or are you unwilling to get creative? Is experience truly lacking, or are you afraid to look foolish? When you strip away the mask, excuses are exposed for what they are. Fear in a costume, hesitation wearing logic's clothes, resistance pretending to be reason. And once you see them for what they are, you can choose differently. You don't need better conditions, you need stronger conviction. You don't need a perfect plan, you need relentless action. No one ever looks back with pride on the excuses they made. People remember the leaps they took, the battles they fought, the work they showed up for even when it was hard. The wins are always worth the discomfort, but they are never given freely. They must be claimed, and excuses are always standing at the gate, trying to keep you from stepping forward. Excuses are persuasive, but they are not permanent. You can unlearn them. You can replace them with discipline, with action, with personal responsibility. Every time you act in spite of an excuse, you weaken it. Every time you choose courage over comfort, you reclaim something the thief was trying to steal. Your future doesn't need your justification. It needs your execution. Not perfection, just movement. Not endless reasons, just relentless resolve. Persistence is praised, and rightly so. It is a refusal to quit, the willingness to press on when things get hard, and the strength to keep showing up when the odds are against you. But persistence alone is not the full story. On its own, persistence can become reckless. It can lead to exhaustion, misdirection, and burnout, because persistence without discipline is not focused power. It is chaos. It's a car with no steering wheel, a storm with no course, a machine with no control. There is a crucial difference between disciplined persistence and desperate motion. One is rooted in structure. The other is driven by anxiety. One is calculated. The other is impulsive. The world may admire those who grind relentlessly. But what is the value of grinding in the wrong direction? What is the reward for stubbornly sprinting down the wrong path? Without discipline, persistence becomes noise, loud but meaningless. Discipline gives persistence its purpose. It takes that raw energy and channels it through a focused system. It separates meaningful effort from wasted motion. It turns effort into effectiveness. Anyone can keep going. That's not the hard part. The hard part is to keep going with intention, to pause long enough to ask, is this the right direction? Is this the most effective approach? Am I building or just burning out? Discipline is the inner governor that checks your persistence before it becomes obsession. It's the voice that says, yes, keep moving, but not like this. Without that voice, persistence becomes an emotional outburst instead of a strategic plan. You keep saying yes to everything, doing more without doing better, working harder but not getting closer. That's not progress. That's chaos in disguise. Some people confuse chaos with passion. They mistake busyness for productivity. They assume that because they are always tired, always in motion, always hustling, they must be getting somewhere. But movement is not achievement. Noise is not signal. Activity is not accomplishment. It is possible to run in circles with perfect persistence and end up nowhere. It is possible to wear yourself out doing things that don't matter, pursuing goals that aren't yours, reacting instead of building. That's not persistence. That's an undisciplined survival mode. True progress requires more than grit. It requires clarity. Discipline provides that clarity. It tells you what to persist in and what to quit. It teaches you the power of focus, of boundaries, of strategic patience. It allows you to say no to distractions, no to detours, no to the ego that pushes you to prove instead of improve. Discipline says, don't just keep going in alignment. There is a cost to persistence, and when undisciplined, you pay that cost with your health, your peace, your relationships, and your purpose. The world romanticizes the story of those who never quit, but it forgets to ask what they never quit doing. Persistence without discipline often becomes an addiction to motion, a fear of stopping, of thinking, of reflecting. But the most dangerous thing is not stopping. It's running full speed in the wrong direction, simply because you're afraid of slowing down. Discipline brings rhythm to the chaos. It teaches you when to rest and when to rise, when to speak and when to listen, when to strike and when to wait. It is not the enemy of persistence, it is its partner. Together they become unstoppable. Discipline says, here is the plan. Persistence says, let's carry it through. One without the other is a ship without a sail, or a sail without a ship. Together, they navigate storms. Separately, they drift or crash. Many people think persistence is a feeling. It's not. Feelings are unreliable. They change with sleep, with stress, with pressure. Discipline is the anchor when persistence begins to waver. It's the system that keeps you in motion on days when motivation disappears. It's the checklist, the calendar, the ritual, the habits that hold you steady when everything around you becomes unstable. Without those systems, your persistence becomes emotional, erratic, and fragile. The most effective people are not those who persist the most. They are those who persist with precision. They don't just work harder, they work smarter. They don't just keep going, they keep going with feedback. They pause to assess, they make adjustments, they refine their aim, because without feedback, persistence is just repetition. And repetition without learning is stagnation. You can scream into the void with relentless energy, or you can act with quiet, disciplined purpose. One drains you, the other builds you. One burns out, the other compounds. That's the difference discipline makes. It transforms effort into elevation. It turns your persistence into a staircase, not a hamster wheel. There is a romantic lie we've been told that all you need is to want it bad enough to never stop, to keep pushing. But there are people who have wanted deeply and persisted endlessly, yet got nowhere. Not because they didn't try hard, but because they didn't try smart. Not because they lacked heart, but because they lacked habits. Not because they weren't persistent, but because they weren't disciplined. Persistence is fire. Discipline is the fireplace. One without the other is dangerous, even destructive. Fire can warm or it can burn. Energy can create or it can consume. The difference lies in control. And control is the gift of discipline. It turns your ambition into architecture. It gives your dreams a blueprint. It allows your persistence to do what it was meant to do, not just keep going, but to keep growing.